Hey guys, it's Jake from Channel1 Gaming back again with a new video for a new series, which is going to be kind of a discussions and debate series. I think that's what I'm going to name the playlist. I haven't quite decided yet. But the topic of today's video is The Last of Us 2 versus Uncharted 5. Now, the aim of the discussion today is to try and sort of give over my views about what I want to see next, which game do I think would be the best to see, what am I keen to see, and sort of in doing that we're going to sort of discuss some of my opinions about both the games and which one I prefer and all of these good things. So yeah, so we've just had an Uncharted game, and I'm about halfway through playing that. If you haven't seen yet, do check out my walkthrough videos in on my channel. But so far that game, I mean, it's brilliant. I mean, the story is there. The graphics are there, the gameplay is there, the immersion you get from all the cutscenes, it all ties together really nicely, and it still feels like a proper Uncharted game. It still has that great feeling. So yeah, I think the way to kick off this discussion is to start with a bit of a comparison between the two games, being The Last of Us and Uncharted. They're both Naughty Dog games, both produced by the same developer. But obviously they are very different in their own unique ways. So I wanted to kind of discuss the things that I think are the key features of a Naughty Dog game, what really makes a Naughty Dog game truly great, and I want to sort of talk about how these compare between Uncharted, between The Last of Us. The three sort of categories I've divided it up into are firstly the story. I think this is really key for a Naughty Dog game, especially a modern one. Older games like Crash Bandicoot and things like that weren't the story wasn't so important because they were just fun no matter what. But yeah, I think for a modern Naughty Dog game, the story has really got to be on point, and both The Last of Us and Uncharted 4 did as well. So I'm going to explore that a little bit more depth. Secondly, I want to talk about the gameplay itself, how the games play out. The different methods, whether it's stealth, whether it's first-person shooter, whether it's third-person shooter. I don't know I don't know the official term, or whether it's these annoying little QuickTime events. I like the QuickTime events. I do like them, but when they're excessive, they can be a bit annoying. So I'll talk a little bit about that and my thoughts about that, and what they might be able to do to improve it as well. And thirdly, what do I want to talk about? I want to talk about the visuals of the games. Now, it's commonly known that these games, the Naughty Dog games, they do really set the benchmark for visuals, for graphics, for cutscene graphics. And yeah, a great example, what's just come out, Uncharted 4, it's absolutely stunning, the visuals on that. It's I didn't think they could make it as different to the remastered old games as they have. I didn't think it would be possible, but they have somehow managed to create this sort of really different feel by changing the way the visuals are, and they're really subtly different. It still feels like Uncharted, but it is a level up, and it really feels like it's utilising I guess the capabilities of the PlayStation 4. So yeah, so that is the agenda for the video. I hope you enjoy it, and yeah. Okay guys, so starting with firstly the story, a bit of analysis about the story in each game. So first, I think the characters, good characters lead to a good story. That is a fact. And in both games, you've got really strong key characters. For example, Last of Us, you've got Ellie, who is, I think she's slightly more of a protagonist than Joel is. Although you spend most of the time playing through the game as Joel, Ellie is actually the focus of the story. She is the centerpiece, if you like. Everything else that happens in the game pretty much revolves around her. And the way those two characters work together, sort of the way that Joel sort of takes on the almost parent role. Well, he does. He takes on the parent role of Ellie, especially after losing his own daughter, and she kind of plugs that gap that is missing from his life. So it's an incredible story, that one. And if you haven't played the game, I strongly recommend you do, because it is brilliant and the story is incredible. Moving on to The Last of Us again, I think. Sorry, not The Last of Us. Moving on to Uncharted. again, the story is great. The characters are great. You've got Drake, Sully. You got Sam, who's Drake's brother, who appears in Uncharted 4. And I think there's definitely a different feel between Uncharted and The Last of Us in terms of characters. The characters in Uncharted, they bounce off each other, they have banter with each other. There's a lot more sort of lightheartedness about the way they communicate and the way that they interact with each other. Whereas in The Last of Us, it's a deadly serious game. Everything is trying to be something, a scenario that could actually happen in real life, and it's the tone of it is a lot more focused, a lot more switched on, whereas Uncharted is just inherently a bit more jokey and jovial. I think I enjoy both. I enjoy the little jokes that Sully would crack or take the piss out of Drake or something like that. Those little moments in the game made me laugh, and I think they do add to the game, definitely. But at the same time, the seriousness of The Last of Us and the way that story is focused about the apocalypse and everything, it's terrifying, you know what I mean? And that's amplified in the way that the characters are pretty, they're not happy people, you know what I mean? They are. There's rare moments of light, but they are, they're not joking around, that's for sure. Something else that's worth comparing is the use of cutscenes. I'd say that Uncharted 4 definitely has the most cutscenes in any game I've ever played. Does that add more to it? I think it does, but I think it's pushing the game more and more towards almost becoming film-like in its play style. You kind of have, you go through sometimes really short periods of gameplay and you think, oh no, another cutscene. And yes, they're entertaining to watch, but sometimes you just want to play the game. You'll be enjoying it, and particularly some of the combat scenes where you are fighting the enemies, they all seem to be over a bit too quickly. So I think that suffers a little bit. In the new Uncharted, I've noticed that. I think in The Last of Us, there are scenes where the gameplay is a bit more elongated, and you feel a bit more immersed because you're actually playing it. It's easy to switch off when you're just watching, but it's not as easy to switch off when you're trying to stealth around some clickers or something like that. So yeah, I think The Last of Us wins in that respect. And I think the third factor is the immersion and how the story immerses you into the game. The Last of Us, the believability of the situation in The Last of Us, and the fact that the apocalypse is based on this bacteria that mutates, and it's almost like some of the things we see in the news where there's those outbreaks of Ebola or whatever it was, and it makes you think, gosh, this is something that could genuinely happen, and that believability adds a real element and different dynamic to the game. I think it makes it feel a lot more true, and that just adds to the immersion, and more immersion is for me more enjoyment. Definitely, I think sometimes I'm playing Uncharted and I kind of think, this guy is blowing people up, he's shooting people up, he's rolling around everywhere, going crazy, all in the name of just getting a little bit of treasure. Particularly in the early games, you thought, hang on a minute, mate, don't risk your life for this. It's not worth that much. I think they have addressed that in the latest game, in the sense that if he doesn't achieve his goals, spoiler alert, but if he doesn't achieve his goals, his brother will be killed effectively by this guy who's blackmailed his brother. And I think giving Drake sort of another reason to go after this treasure other than seeking his own fortune is kind of adds to the believability of why he'd risk his life countless times, shooting up loads of people in the most strange situations. It makes you believe that a bit more, and I think they've addressed that well. So I think believability, I think they're both on par in the games. Okay, so moving on to the next sort of topic, if you like, that I think is essential to make a great Naughty Dog game. What makes a Naughty Dog game great? And this is the visuals. Naughty Dog seem to be priding themselves in sort of leading the industry, if you like, in terms of graphics, particularly for games of their type. Obviously, you've got your Call of Duties and things like that, where the graphics are on quite a good level now, and but at the same time, if you think about what those games are about and how they're played, and actually relatively how much content there is actually in a Call of Duty game. Obviously, you've got the campaigns, but in terms of running around multiplayer maps, 24 hours a day or whatever, there's very little visual that you actually see. Even with zombies, it's just one map, one location, one sort of lump of set objects that the developers just put into this scene. And I think the visuals that Naughty Dog create in their games are very impressive. Certainly when The Last of Us came out on PlayStation 3, it really, really set the bar in terms of graphics, in terms of everything else we've already talked about as well and have still to talk about, but certainly graphically it was very strong. People were even saying, when the PS4 was released and Uncharted Remastered came out, sorry, not Uncharted Remastered, The Last of Us Remastered came out, people were saying, this game it's a PS3 game, but it's on the PS4. It feels like the most next gen game on the PS4. Certainly in the first sort of year the PS4 was around, people were like, this is the best game on the PS4 is a PS3 game, which is bonkers. But that's just how good it was. I don't think it was everything else was bad. I just think the standards set by Naughty Dog when The Last of Us came out was so high that it was just incredible, really. But then I go on to Uncharted 4, and now, guys, I promise you, they have outdone themselves again. I was really surprised when I started playing. I couldn't believe how good it was. For me, this feels like, I'm not a massive PC gamer or anything like that. You guys who are PC gamers will probably tell me, "Oh, Jacob, yeah. PC graphics are much better than console graphics." Yeah, that's great. And I'm aware of all that, but in terms of what I've played on the PS4 so far, Uncharted 4 is brilliant, really good, really strong visuals. Everything feels really smooth. It feels like it's running at 60 FPS all the time, and just the whole feeling you get from the visuals is stunning. It's something you have to play to believe. So play it, guys. Little plug there. So yeah, that's what I've really got to say about visuals. And I think moving on to the third and probably the most important factor, amongst all the other stuff that we're talking about, ultimately these two titles are video games. They're meant to be fun to play. So the next and final factor I want to compare the two games over is the actual gameplay. And I think the two games are quite similar in their nature. If you think about it, you've got sort of action gameplay where you'll be shooting either zombies if it's The Last of Us, or random militants if it's Uncharted. And then you've got like the stealth scenes. So in Uncharted you'll be stealthing around like a museum before you steal a piece of whatever, stealthing through a cave or something like that. And in The Last of Us you'll be stealthing through pretty much anywhere you could possibly imagine. Anywhere where there's zombies or clickers, you'll be stealthing around them. And I think in terms of the stealth gameplay, The Last of Us does trump Uncharted. I think just the fear that's in you when the music's playing and you can hear the clickers walking around, and the sort of feeling you get is truly horrific. So I think the stealth gameplay is much more impactful in The Last of Us. It's not to say it's not good in Uncharted, because it is good, but I think in Uncharted you kind of have the choice. It seems to be, from what I played of Uncharted 4, if you want to stealth you can. If you don't, you really don't have to. You can just whip out your pistol and just go mad, which might be some people's preference. I like to do a bit of both. I like to mix it up, but yeah. And then you've got the stealth, you've got the open gameplay. I think it's very similar in the two games now. You kind of a set sort of rota of guns. There's probably about 10 to 12 weapons in each of the games. And you kind of just use them, and they are fun. There's a few mechanics in Uncharted that aren't in The Last of Us. The Last of Us feels a lot more slower paced in terms of how you move around. You're not as agile. You can't just randomly decide to jump on top of, I don't know, like a column or something, or seek cover by diving across a rooftop. You have to think a little bit more, and you have to make sure that you're always your flanks covered and everything, and you have to, especially on the harder difficulties, you've got to know that you can take out the enemies no matter which direction they come from. So, and with that as well, I think the nature of the enemies in The Last of Us, there's much more variety. You've obviously got the clickers, which are a one-hit kill. Then you've got the sort of the runner zombies, which they run at you and beat you up, and they're quick. So you've got sort of slow movement, fast movement, and then you've got those huge things. I can't remember what they're called, but they are really scary, guys. Like, if you've ever played The Last of Us and you've fought one of these boss things, they are They are mad. And I think at one point in the game, there's like 2 of them come at you, and it's just, it's a nightmare. Absolute nightmare. Boss fights in Uncharted. I don't think I've got to one yet in Uncharted 4. I'm only about halfway through the game. But if I certainly remember from the prior game, certainly in Uncharted 3, there was a lot of bosses where it was kind of like some guy who was like 9 foot tall with a minigun, and it wasn't very imaginative. It was kind of like, take cover, spray about 1 million rounds into him, and it'll eventually drop. And it's, it just felt a little bit lazy. They didn't really think, let's try and make a boss that's really challenging, that's got some kind of other attacks other than just a gun or beating you up. Or it was kind of a little bit lazy compared to The Last of Us, where the boss battles were really intense. Like that thing, those big things. I was scared when I was fighting those things, I tell you. So guys, I think in conclusion to the 3 factors I identified, the 3 factors that I believe make a Naughty Dog game truly great, which are the story, visuals, and the gameplay. I think for the story, I think The Last of Us just edges it, just because of that extra element of believability, and I think that really does add a lot to the game. And I just remember playing it when I watched that first intro scene, and it was kind of like how the apocalypse was formed, and it was a bit cliche, and it's a bit like, this feels like I've seen it before in movies or whatever. But I just think the way they set that up and the story behind The Last of Us is just incredible. Even to now, it's still great. You can play it through endless times, guys. It's a really brilliant game. Visuals, certainly in their day, they're both as good as you're gonna get on the console. I think at the moment Uncharted 4 sets the bar, so I'd probably say that Uncharted 4 has to win that kind of round, just based on the fact it's the most recent game. But I think if they do make Last of Us 2 or whatever, that will be again as good as Uncharted 4, if not better again. It would be amazing. I'm really looking forward to see what they actually do with their next game. So we'll give that one to Uncharted on the basis of what's out at the moment. And then with regards to gameplay, I think it has to be a draw, really. I think both games are really fun to play. They're both fun in their own unique way. You've sort of got the more jokey kind of gameplay, almost a little bit slapstick in Uncharted. The amount of times Drake gets beaten up in Uncharted 4, guys, in the cutscenes and the quick time events, the amount of times that happens, gosh, he'd have brain damage by now. It's ridiculous. So it is really slapstick, and I think it's the tone's different to The Last of Us, where it's a lot more sinister. In The Last of Us, it's a lot more the environment feels more dangerous. You always think when you play an Uncharted that when he gets into these scraps, that why does the enemy not just think, I'll just pull out a gun and take him out? But all of the enemies in The Last of Us are there to kill you and nothing else. That's it. They don't want to be on your side. They don't want to use you to try and get to the treasure because they're too dumb to figure out the clues themselves. Like these zombies, they've got one objective, and that is to end your life. Which sounds a little bit dark, but that's how it is, and that's why it's so scary, and that's why the game's so almost fun to play. The survival element of it. It's great fun. So in conclusion, it's kind of a draw, really, guys. You got one each way and a draw, so I don't mind what they make next. I'd be happy if they made Uncharted 5 next. I'd be happy if they made The Last of Us 2 next. On the way things are going, I would like to see The Last of Us 2, because I don't really think you should just release 2 of the same game and forget about another game that was great. And it would be great to see what they do with it. So I think in terms of how the games weigh up, I'm not bothered. I like both of them just as good as each other. But I would love to see The Last of Us 2 come out. I think that would be a great release for Naughty Dog. I think it would be very successful. That pretty much sums up my comparison. So guys, now we've covered what I'd like to see in the next Naughty Dog game, we can sort of move on to the interesting stuff. Now, what do we know? What do we know about the next game? What is coming? What clues do we have? So I've done a bit of research, and I've looked into sort of what people think the next game is going to be. And it turns out that actually at the very end of Uncharted 4, there's actually a mission called Epilogue, in which you play a sort of young girl walking around a bedroom and stuff. And this is interesting because the very first mission in The Last of Us, you play as Joel's daughter walking around the house, and sort of trying to suss out what's going on. And it's very sort of cryptic And actually, in this epilogue scene, on her wardrobe, I think, I'm not quite sure, but I think it's on her wardrobe, there's actually a poster that says "The Last of Us American Daughters." Now, this is very, very interesting because on that poster is a picture of a girl in a hood, so we don't know who it is, but she's pregnant, or it's a woman and she's pregnant. You can't really tell because I think the woman's actually wearing a gas mask. Let me just double check. So yeah, I was correct, guys. On this poster, this is a sort of redhead girl, a bit like Ellie, is pregnant and she's wearing a gas mask, and it's like, what on earth is going on, guys? Make what you think of that. But I mean, that's certainly a teaser. It doesn't give anything obvious away. But that sort of hints that maybe Last of Us is still in the picture, and on that basis, maybe we can expect Last of Us 2 next. Maybe that's the thing. And will it be called The Last of Us American Daughters? Interesting stuff, guys. Leave in the comments below what you think about that. But I think that's very interesting. And secondly, this is another little thing that sort of caught my mind, and it's probably caught your mind as well. But actually, within, again, spoiler alert, but in Uncharted 4, you actually get to play a mission from Crash Bandicoot 1, guys. The game that was released on the PlayStation 1, which I'm looking up on top of my wardrobe now, and I've actually still got an original PlayStation 1 with Crash Bandicoot 1, and guys, it hasn't changed one bit. So they've got this mission. It's the one from sort of the early stages of the campaign where you're being in true Crash Bandicoot style. You're being chased by a boulder. You've got to jump over the boxes, spin all, get the peaches and everything. So yeah, it's really exciting, and obviously people are like, great, a throwback to Crash Bandicoot. But what does this actually mean? Does this mean that Naughty Dog are looking back at Crash Bandicoot? Are they going to make a new Crash game? Is that the thing? So I think that'd be great. I think I'd enjoy playing it. It's certainly very, very different in just pretty much every single aspect to the Uncharted and the Last of Us series. But it would be great to see if they do a throwback to that, and if they maybe release a new Crash game. That would be awesome. So yeah, there's lots to consider, guys. And in conclusion to everything, I don't really care what they make next. I trust that it would be good, and I look forward to when it comes out. But I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. And if you have, do give us a like and a subscribe or whatever. And yeah, keep tuned into the channel, and there'll be more content like this coming if you guys want to see it. Cool. Cheers, guys.